everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome to another Makers with Heart mystery envelope video. This month, Kim sent out supplies to all the Makers with Heart. We all got the same thing and she has a few rules. So we received pieces from the Hello Darlin collection and some zip strips and then some red shimmer trim and a piece of candy apple cardstock. So Kim's rules are that we are not allowed to use any flowers or stars, and she basically doesn't want us to recreate something that's featured in the catalog. We need to add at least 2 pops of color from cardstock. I can add any amount of pattern paper only if I use everything that's included in the envelope, and then I need to add a form of mixed media to the tags. Okay. And I can add any other embellishments. So I'm going to use the Hello stamp set, and then I'm also going to use the stitched hexagons. This is a retired product, but perhaps you have it in your stash or some other hexagon dies. And then I'm going to use the die that's called My Whole Heart and also the simple serif uppercase dies. Okay, so I'm going to start with doing my mixed media on my tags. I'm going to do 3 cards with these supplies. So this is a little section on, it's got 3 designs on this stencil, and it has one section that has hearts. So I'm going to use some liquid pearls. This is the deep water color, and we just got more of that color in, so it's available. And I'm just going to spread it out with a wide spatula and then peel off my stencil. So I've pre-treated that stencil with some pixie spray so it had some tack to it already. Okay, for the next one, I'm going to use a Slimline stencil. And this is from a retired pack, but just go through your stash and see what stencils you have. And as long as it doesn't have a flower or a star, you're good. Okay, so I'm going to use some of this shimmer spray. This is Fiery Sunset. And I brought in my splat box, and I'm just going to spray a little bit and make sure you shake it up really well before you start to spritz, because there's all kinds of shimmery goodness in there. Okay, so we'll peel that off and we get that pattern. So our tags are done. And then I'm going to cut a piece of white daisy cardstock at 4 by 5 1/4. And a piece of candy apple at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and that's going to be my frame matting my white daisy. Okay. So now I'm going to cut some strips of patterned paper, and I'm looking to see how those mixed media tags look, and I didn't like the patterns behind them, so I'm going to bring in some sapphire. So I'm going to cut a strip at 5 1/4. And just playing around with the measurements, and I wound up going with 1 3/4. Okay, and then I'll bring in a strip of patterned paper. Just taking a look at what I have to work with here. I'm going to use that polka dot paper to add a topper to that tag. But first I'm going to cut a strip at 3/4 inch by 5 1/4 of this pattern. Just looking at the design and what I want to keep. Okay, we're getting there. All right, so now my tags will show up because they have that sapphire behind them. And then I'm going to do some stamping. So I'm going to bring out the foam piece from my stamp set. So I have some cushion for stamping. And I'm going to stamp the word hello. Okay, in sapphire ink. So that's going to be in the upper left corner. And then I can add my tags. Okay, so now I'm going to create some faux ribbon using shimmer trim. I'm just cutting off a little piece, and then I'll cut it in half vertically and then add little angles to create ribbon. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to use that zip strip or I might save it for another card. And I decided to bring in this other piece of patterned paper. I think that periwinkle looks a little too much like stars to me, so I'm not going to use it. So I'm going to use these stripes. And here's a trick when you have a piece that's not wide enough. I'm going to cut 2 strips at 1/2 inch. And because my tags are going to be layered on top, the seam where the 2 pieces meet is going to be covered up. So I'm just going to trim this down a little bit, and then I'll add it, and then I'll check to make sure we're good. Okay, so now we can start layering up our card here. So I've added that polka dot strip to the top of my tag off camera, and you'll see in a second. So I'm just going to add each of these pieces with some Tombow tape runner. So be sure to check at the end of this video for the playlist, and also in the description below. I'll leave a link and you'll be able to find all of the other Makers with Heart videos using these same products and see what kind of projects they come up with. Okay, so I'm just basically gluing everything down, layering it all in there. And then we'll add 1 tag with tape runner, and then the other tag I'll pop with some foam tape. And then we'll add those 2 pieces of shimmer trim. And I trim them down a little bit so they're not quite as long. And then we'll add them. Sometimes the shimmer trim's a little fussy and I get that adhesive backing off. And then I felt like it needed just a little something extra. So I'm going to bring in a navy blue journal pen and my T-square ruler, and I'm just going to doodle some lines around the edges just to kind of bring everything together. So just going to carefully draw some lines, and you could do this freehand, but I felt more comfortable with this one doing it with my T-square. And just going to add a few lines around it. Just felt like that finished everything off. Okay, so card number 1, all done. Here's some close-up shots. Love those liquid pearls. Just got a little bit of shine. Okay, next card, I'm going to use these hexagons, and off camera, I'm going to die cut a whole bunch of them out of all the papers that I got. And then I've pulled the H and I from the uppercase sans serif, and I'm going to add some liquid glass to them. This is an old trick. It kind of makes them look like acrylic embellishments, and you just add and trace over the image with liquid glass, and it self-levels. And it does take quite some time to dry, but just set it aside and let it dry, and we'll go ahead and work on some other elements to our card. So I've got these candy apple hexagons, and I've got a hexagon stencil. This is also a retired stencil set, but like I said, go through your stash and see what stencils you have. And then I'm going to spray them with some mica spray, and this is antique bronze. And it's just shimmery and adds just some nice bronze touch to the hexagons. So you have hexagons on hexagons. Nice shimmer. So I'll add some paper towel to pick up the excess. And then we've got patterned hexagons. Pretty cool. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get the splat box out of the way, and we're ready to start building our card. Okay, So I'm going to bring in a piece of white daisy. I've cut this at 4 by 5 1/4, and then I have a piece of sapphire cut at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's going to be the mat. I've got my letters that spell hi, and I'm just going to start arranging these hexagons on my card front. And I've got several choices there, and I think I like that design, so I'll just start gluing everything down. So it's just basic gluing. I'm leaving a couple of white spaces around the letters and up in the left corner. So we'll just have those hexagons go from the lower left to the upper right. And you don't have to watch me glue all of these, but I'll skip ahead in just a second. So we'll start out with that one in the upper right, and then we'll skip ahead. So I'm keeping that same design. We'll just get them all glued down. And then flip everything over and cut off everything that's hanging over the edge. And there it is. So then I'll just layer everything on my card, and we're going to call that one done. I think it's got enough going on. And here's some close-up shots. Pretty cool. So I did layer the H and I with 2 more layers of sapphire die cuts underneath there to give it a little bit more lift. And then that liquid glass just makes it look so cool. Okay, so now I'm going to use a die that is called My Whole Heart, and it's got a background and then it's got the letters. So I've already glued them to the background, and then I'm going to do that same trick with the liquid glass and just trace over the whole entire thing with liquid glass. So while that's drying, I'm going to bring in another stencil, and this one is from Stencil Pack 1. And I just got in a new supply of stencils, so they should be available. I'll leave links in the description below. And I'm going to use some stickles. This is the stickles gel, and this one is called Asteroid, and it's silvery, but it's also got some colors when you tilt it in the light, some iridescence to it. And it's got little discs. There's little round circles of silver that are in the gel. It's pretty cool. So I'm just going to spread some of this out, and then I'll take my wide spatula, whatever you call this piece, and spread all that gel out and let it catch in all of those circles on that stencil. So this stencil has been pre-treated. I sprayed some pixie spray on it to keep it from moving. And we'll just go ahead and move all that gel around. And there's the reveal. Okay, so off camera, I've dried it using my heat tool. And I've cut a piece of sapphire for matte. And then my sentiment is all dry and ready to go. So now I'm going to cut some pieces to lay underneath my sentiment. And basically you can ignore this because I wound up changing my mind, and I'm just going to layer stuff on top of it. But anyway, I'm cutting my strips, and I'm going to cut the zip strip in half so that I can use it. And I didn't quite get it in half, so I'm going to trim it one more time so they're even. And then my shimmer trim, I'm going to cut that down 4 inches, and we're ready to go. Okay, so I have the gel piece set up on my card on top of that mat of sapphire, and I'm going to start laying these pieces out. So this striped zip strip, I'll add that, and of course this is the same trick when you don't have something that's quite wide enough. You can trim it down and layer it, and my sentiment's going to go on top of it, so it'll cover up that seam where the 2 pieces overlap and meet each other, and it'll look like a continuous piece. And then I'll add my shimmer trim. I decided I didn't like that pattern paper butted up against there, and I wanted something wider. So I added my shimmer trim, and then I cut 2 more pieces of that pattern at 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to add those and do the same thing, layer them and The seam will be underneath my sentiment. And then we'll pop the sentiment with some thin foam tape. Okay. And we'll keep it nice and simple, because there's enough going on with all that shine and glitter with that Stickles gel. Pretty cool. So most of these supplies can be found in my online store, and I'll make a list with links in the description below. Here's all 3 cards, and I'll have some close-ups of that last one. And again, if you click on the playlist at the end of this video, you'll be able to find all the other Makers with Heart mystery envelope videos, and you'll be able to see what they've done with all these supplies. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it, and then you'll be able to find all of my videos. And thanks for watching.